All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Level Up Grappling Podcast. Now, we enjoyed this guest so much, we had to have him back on as quickly as possible because he is a legend and there's so much to learn. So, without further ado, one of American wrestling's greatest champions and one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of the modern world, Mark Schultz, is back. So, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Glad
You
to be
were
here. Thank you for inviting me.
So you were just talking about somebody in particular. So I'd like you to pick up on that story.
Oh, my brother Dave. Yeah, I was talking about when he was a kid, he was very fat and uncoordinated and these really pudgy. His nickname was Pudge, and he had dyslexia, which prevented him from being able to read. And the letters P, B, B, and Q, they would flip back and forth, up and down. He couldn't figure out how to read that. So he got through school. He got through high school. I don't know how he did it without being able to read. And then I taught him how to study in college. He got a good 3.3 GPA, better than me. I got only 3.0. But I had to wrestle an extra year too. Dave really didn't like collegiate style that much. I mean, he was good at it, but he was a lot better at freestyle.
Why
And
why was that? What do you think that was?
I think because if you look at the way Dave is built, he's strong, extremely, he's deceptively strong. But if you compare him to, say, someone like me, I have more upper body strength than he does. And that's probably came from gymnastics. Northern California, all around state gymnastics champion when I was a sophomore in high school. And so I had a lot of upper body strength, and you got to have a lot of upper body strength to wrestle collegiate because you're riding and escaping. The guy who's on bottom is trying to escape. You're trying to hold him down. And you're not allowed to lock your hands, which makes it even more difficult. There was a guy in like 1940s, I think it was. He used his locked hands when it was legal back then to keep his opponent down, and the guy couldn't escape. And so they made a rule against locked hands. But freestyle, you can lock your hands. You can slam people, which is good in a street fight. But what's even more important in a street fight, I think, is riding and escaping. If you look at the way Khabib fights, he grabs you and then he like ties you up with his legs, throws legs, and then punches you from behind. And that's a good tactic. It's like never gonna fail. I mean, it's possible. Lucky you get a lucky punch in somewhere, but anyway, that's to me that's the ultimate martial art. The takedowns of wrestling, the submission, the conditioning of wrestling, the submission holds of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, elbows and knees of Muay Thai, punches of boxing, maybe some Taekwondo kicks. Muay Thai is probably the best for kicks. Yeah. So those four martial arts together make the best martial art.
Let me ask you a question with regards to developing someone, say from the ground up, with regards to their hip rides and escapes. What drills would you recommend? How would you develop somebody, a beginner?
I would have him do a lot of frog hops. You know frog hops, right?
Mhm.
And go boing, 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 all the way across the room. There was a guy from North Korea. He won the 87 Worlds, same year as me. Me and him got hammered in the drug testing room together and trying to get us to pee. We just kept going, we need more beer. So they kept feeding us free beer. So, so anyway, yeah, this dude was unbelievable. Uh, uh, he was the only guy I ever saw shoot from two legs. He would squat down like a frog, and then he would just shoot, just jump at the guy, and then he would recoil. His legs would recoil, and he'd be ready for the next jump as soon as his feet hit the ground. And he's just going boing, 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 boing all across the mat. And he got caught it was North Korea against South Korea in the finals, and he got caught in a alligator death roll, and he was behind 6-0, and he came back one takedown at a time, and he just did these frog hops. Anyway, in gymnastics, we do frog hops all the time because that's really how to get your quads strong. And quads are like the most important muscle in your whole body. If your legs go out on you, you just go out on it. So I would do that every night. Like when my gymnastics coach would let me off, I'm about 5 blocks from my home. I would frog hop home. And man, you just do one set of 20 and your quads are going to be pumped. Yeah, that's probably your most important muscle. I forgot the question.
So I was talking about hip rides and escapes, how to develop somebody's, especially that tactile sensitivity for hip riding. What I notice with a lot of guys that come train with me, they have no sensitivity when it comes to using their hip pressure and how to ride properly. And I find it a lot of times a bit of a challenge to teach. I tell them, hey, get a soccer ball, start learning, start riding, get the stability ball. You have to learn how to connect. But I want to hear from the master himself. How would you get somebody to develop that skill?
With a ball?
Just in general, what would you do?
I recommend everybody get into at least 2 years of gymnastics when right around the 6th or 7th grade. And then after that, no matter what they do after that, they're going to be able to figure it out very quickly because gymnasts have to visualize very complicated, risky techniques. Miss the high bar by a millimeter, you break your neck. So it's very important to visualize everything first, and it's much easier to visualize a wrestling move or a submission hold than it is a gymnastics move. So if you can just visualize a gymnastics move, you can figure anything out. My gymnastics coach, when he was done coaching gymnastics, he just taught himself how to golf, and nobody showed him. He just went out there and watched and copy. He became this incredible golfer.
So what about if it's a 25, 30-year-old guy that has had no gymnastics experience, not really any martial arts, but wants to learn how to wrestle, and especially mat wrestle and ride? How would you train them?
First, I'd train them to defend against leg attacks. Teach them how to sprawl. And once you can sprawl, you can stop a lot of attacks. You don't need to know how to wrestle, but just drop your hips, throw your feet back, and whizzer the guy, or front headlock him, or cow catch, or there's all kinds of stuff you can do from there. Yeah, and this is such a dangerous sport we're in, you know that? And we can cripple people like for life with that's scary, Mikey Messamucci, how'd you like to meet him in a dark alley? The limb collector. It's a good thing he's a good kid. But God, what he's done is probably should go to prison. I mean,
I'd love to really get your perspective, given the fact that you're a jiu-jitsu black belt and a world-class wrestler. What is the best way to balance that? Because, look, Mikey Musumeci is a straight guard player. And when we had you on last time, you're saying, like, you're not ever on your back. Like, who's putting Mark Schultz on his back? Nobody. It's not happening. So how do you balance developing the guard skills with the wrestling to become, I guess you can say, like a complete submission grappler? Like, what is your solution to that?
Yeah, going to my back was very difficult at first. We as wrestlers, we brainwash ourselves, stay off our back. And to go to the back again was very, very uncomfortable for a long time. But I got used to it, and I'm totally comfortable in it now. But the thing people don't understand about wrestling is, well, if you're a wrestler and you're in a fight, chances are that fight's going to happen on a hard surface. So if you're a wrestler and you can take people down, it doesn't really matter that they're good at the guard. As long as their head is a couple inches from a hard surface, you just smash him in the forehead until his head breaks against the hard surface.
It's true.
So that's something people don't take into account when you talk about wrestling as a martial art. A backseat play on concrete is very different than a backseat play in a wrestling room. It puts a whole nother element into this. If you look at all the rules of the UFC, I think there's 31 rules. Well, if you're in a real fight, those things that you're prohibited from doing in the UFC are the best things to do in a fight. Eye gouge, biting, groin shots, breaking fingers. It's so easy to break fingers. But, you better make sure you're not going to be friends with that guy. I don't know it. But, yeah, that's the thing about martial arts. Now, you guys are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, right?
Yes.
Not me.
So, okay. So, you guys know what I'm talking about. But, yeah, if you don't have the experience to become a wrestler, you need to learn defense first, sprawling first, and go down into a Schultz front headlock.
Damn straight.
Sprawl into it. Yeah.
I actually find the Schultz front headlock so effective. It actually ends up becoming very easy, especially when you are against jiu-jitsu guys where they don't have any wrestling skill and they're constantly bent over, and their necks out in these weird ways. It's just like, if I can snap you, and I don't need a lot to snap, I'll just circle them out, snap. Because a technique I always teach, Mark, you might laugh at this. I call it the wet willy. The wet willy when you put your finger in the person's ear.
Yeah.
So when I teach them the collar tie, I go, wet willy. Get your finger in the middle in their ear and rip the head so their head isn't straight. Turn it so like their jaw starts coming up. Circle them out and snap them right into that Schultz headlock. And when you really start developing that drill, you start to see just how easy it is to get people to the ground with that Schultz headlock.
Yeah, there's a bunch of variations from that too. Like, I'll start hooking the guy's arms with my legs. Like, when I cut the corner, that arm, if I pull my head out, I can hook that arm. Anyway, there's a really bunch of good submission holds from. There's a wrestling word for that kind of a ride. Roger Frizzell would do it all the time. I forget the name of that ride, but I was taught that move by my coach at UCLA when I was a freshman at UCLA. His name was Dave Auble. He was a fourth in the Olympics, two-time NCAA champion, and outstanding wrestler in the NCAAs. And he was a really little guy, but he was just a real badass. Like, just he'd carry a mouthpiece with him everywhere he went, just in case. He's crazy. And so he was really, he taught me this near knee block spin behind, which I didn't think was exciting enough to learn when I was a college freshman. Years later, I rediscovered it, and it became my go-to move. It's almost impossible to stop, just technically. Anyway, there's a lot of brutal submission holds from that position, and you could break somebody's shoulders, break their elbows. When you guys called me and asked me to come back on here, I thought, I've got a lot of stuff that I didn't say. A lot of the stuff that I would say, I've already said, like in a bunch of other podcasts. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but yeah, so learn to sprawl.
Well, I've got a question then, Mark. I'll help you out here, buddy. Let's give you something to talk about. I'll change it up a bit. With your wrestling and your jiu-jitsu, what do you find the easiest to join together smoothly and the most difficult to join together smooth. The facets.
Most difficult is going to your back.
Mm-hmm.
For a wrestler to go to his back, it's very difficult. But on the other hand, being on top is where you want to be. Just like Khabib. Well, takedowns and conditioning is really like 90% of fighting. All the technique in the world is not going to help you if you're helpless with fatigue. That's the Iowa way. Drive your opponent into exhaustion, and then technique doesn't really matter. You guys will fall down anyway. Ed
Best way to do it.
The guy that I wrestled, you guys ever seen that match with me and Ed Bannock?
I have.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, well, that just happened to be the first time ABC Wide World of Sports showed an entire college match on ABC Wide World of Sports.
Oh. And
it was the first thing I captured on tape. It was the first time I ever saw myself wrestle. Videotape was just invented then. And so a lot of my stuff was lost. But I have a fragment of 1981 NCAAs on YouTube. I have the entire 1982 NCAAs on YouTube and the entire 83 NCAAs on YouTube. But the 82, that was significant because Ed Bannock was going to become the first four-time NCAA champion in history. And I moved up a weight to try to stop him from doing that. And also, I wanted revenge because he had beat me 4 times. Anyway, he was incredibly conditioned. He was the best conditioned athlete I've ever met in my life, by far. When we were in the 1983 World Team Trials together, he ran a 5-minute mile. This is a 198-pounder.
Wow.
I mean, he's just a machine. His nickname is the Horse. And I think the reason they call him the Horse is because he can run like a horse. But anyway, he pinned or superior decisioned everybody in the 1980 NCAAs except his semifinal match. He lost to Colin Kilrain, who was a 3-time bronze medalist. And then the next year, he pinned or superior decisioned all of his opponents when he won his second NCAA title. And in his third year, he pinned or superiored all of his opponents until he got to me. And then I beat him. I wouldn't talk about this if I had lost. So there was something spiritual going on that night. That was a paranormal experience. Afterwards, it came up to me. My coach is sitting right next to me. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Mark, what weight are you going next year?" I said, 177. And he goes, "I'm going 190. And my coach thought that was the funniest thing ever. I don't know why he was laughing, but he starts laughing. And anyway, Bannock went up a weight the next year. He won the NCAAs at the weight above him the next year. And then we both made the 84 Olympic team, and we both won gold medals. And when he won his gold medal, he beat Clark Davis from Canada, who was a world silver medalist. He beat Clark 11-2. That's how dominant Ed Bannock was. Anyway, he was a freaking machine. And matter of fact, Ed Bannock and I were ranked according to a poll that was taken by all the wrestlers and coaches back in the 1980s. And I was voted the college wrestler of the decade. And Bannock was voted the number 2 best college wrestler of the decade. And what are the chances that the number 1 and 2 guy are going to be in the same weight, the same year, meet in the finals? I mean, that tells you, that's in a book called The Golden Era of Amateur Wrestling, the 1980s. I got it on my bookshelf right here somewhere. I'm going to have to donate all my books to the Hall of Fame or something when I die. Okay, guys, if I die during the podcast, make sure the Hall of Fame gets my book.
You got it. Mark, I got an interesting question. So you've won basically everything. You won the Olympics, you won the World Championships, NCAA. Did you find that the World Championships might have been harder for you because the Soviet Union was in it compared to the Olympics at that time, in terms of the overall severity
To
of the
me,
talent?
well, the Olympics, a lot of people, that's the thing about the boycott. It created a perception that across the board, everything was going to be easier. And that was not true at all. Matter of fact, my weight class, my brother's weight class, Ed Bannock's weight class, my weight class, and Barry Davis's weight class were pretty much unaffected by the boycott. I still had the number one ranked wrestler in the world from Turkey, Reza Karabajak. And the way you set up the Olympic tournament is you weigh in, you step on a scale, buck naked, you pull an egg out of a bucket, you open up the egg, and inside is a number. Well, I drew the number 6. Well, Reza Karabajak's the number one ranked guy in the world. He's European champion. He beat all the Russians that boycotted the Olympics. He's standing right behind me, and he pulls out the number 8. So all the evens guys are on one side of the board. That means 2's going to wrestle 4, and 6 is going to wrestle 8. I have the gold medal match, my very first match. And I go back to my hotel room, and I'm scared out of my mind, for lack of a better term. And I just sat there on my bed staring at this wall for like 2 hours, just sitting, sweating, waiting for this match. And then first move of the match, he does a limp arm to a high crotch, and I grab him in a kimura. Now, we called it a double wrist lock back then when I was wrestling, but the Brazilians came to America and renamed it the kimura. But me and Dave would always do that. We'd always use a double wrist lock as a counter to a single leg, but we would trap the guy's head on the inside of our chest here so that he couldn't escape. And then we could trip him to the far side or throw him straight backwards. But I never did it with the guy's head on the outside before. I just saw this Cuban down in the Pan American Games do it to some guy from Paraguay or Uruguay or those Guay countries. Anyway, I thought, it's him or me. So it's going to be me. And I just threw it. And he let go of his own grip. And his arm goes straight back over the back of him like that. And then he hit his head. I was trying to roll him through so he'd go head over heels. But he hit his head halfway through the move. And his elbow snapped instantly. And I fell on top of him. And I'm looking at the ref like, hurry up and call the fall. I'm about to get this number one guy out of the tournament. When they called the fall, I was like, thank God I got the number one guy out of the tournament. But then I had another match that day with a New Zealander, and they cheated me so bad during that match. I think I beat him 15-7, something like that. Well, I think 6 out of the 7 points were given to him by the ref. When I would do a gut wrench, they would score 2-2 instead of 2-0. They were trying to screw me every way they could. After I broke the Turk's arm, they hated me because, that guy was ranked number 1 in the world, European champion. Anyway, everybody hates Americans anyway, so it's always against America. So luckily, we were in Los Angeles, though, so things kind of went our way that time. But I was sitting in the stands, and they said that I've been disqualified from that match. Well, my mom thinks I've been thrown out of the whole tournament, and she's freaking out. And I'm like, just calm down. I've already figured this out. Yeah. Anyway, it's a double elimination, so it didn't matter. As long as I kept winning, I could still win. But I had the world's closest match ever with the Canadian. There was this Canadian that beat me in the Pan Ams. His name's Chris Rinke. And this dude is the toughest Canadian I've ever met. And we had a match that was so close, so high pressure, so critical. I've never had a closer, more high pressure, more critical match against anyone in my life. And at Oklahoma, Jim Humphrey was my coach. Well, Jim Humphrey leaves my senior year to take the job as national coach of Canada. So now Jim Humphrey is coaching this guy to beat me. And he knows me better than anyone. As a matter of fact, it even manifested itself in the middle of the match because they had called me, given me my final stalling call. And Chris could put me down, or he could stay on the feet. Well, he said, put me down. And Humphrey yells over, no, stay on the feet. And so he changes his mind and stays on the feet, which is the right thing that he should have done if he wanted to beat me. But that'll give you an idea of how difficult it was for me to go against this Canadian. And as a matter of fact, he was beating me 2-2 criteria tiebreaker, and then I knew I had to score. I was going to lose, so I shot in, took him down, gut wrenched him, and now the score is 5-2. And I'm looking at the scoreboard while I'm wrestling, and it switches from 5-2 to 4-2. I was like, what the hell just happened? In my mind, I had thought, oh, well, if it's 5-2, I can give away 5 takedowns and still win the criteria tiebreaker. They were cautioning me so bad. I knew they were going to throw me out of the tournament. And I got my last caution, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to throw caution to the wind and just shoot and give up a takedown and win the criteria tiebreaker. So I shoot in there. I didn't even set it up. And he grabs me in a front body lock. And I just happen to have this unstoppable counter to the front body lock. It's called a duck scoop. And I changed my mind in that split second. I went from thinking about giving away a takedown or attack. And I attacked. And I scored, and I beat him 5-3. And then at the end of the tournament, they give you the bracket sheet if you win. So they gave me the bracket sheet. I put it on my wall, and I'm looking at it about a year later, and I figure out that had I given that point away, I would have lost the criteria tiebreaker and the gold medal, and my life would have been ruined. It's so weird sitting there in my office all by myself, coming to this realization, because I have nobody to share this with. I'm so weird. Anyway, I don't think I answered your question.
Basically, I said, was the World Championships more difficult, more challenging than the Olympics? Because sometimes people say it is more challenging.
Yeah. For my weight class and my Olympics, it was the same as far as challenging goes. The next year, I became the only 1984 Olympic champion to win the 1985 World Championships. So that kind of shut up my critics that were trying to tell me how easy the Olympics were. The Olympics were not easy at all. I mean, I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't even know if I could make the team. But I don't know, I was blessed with gymnastics. Really helped me a lot. I mean, if I could point to one thing that pulled me out of more trouble than anything else, it was my gymnastics training. I mean, it's almost like your body has a mind of its own. You know, you look at these gymnasts doing these incredible tricks, right? They're not thinking about how to do these tricks. Their body knows how to do them. Their body's just reacting. It's just responding. Well, that's what happens. That's what happened with me when I was in wrestling. My gymnastics skills would take over and would pull me out of situations I couldn't think my way out of. But a match with Ed Bannock's a good example of that. My gymnastics and how it paid off.
Do you think, Mark? Sorry, Mark. Do you think that the body awareness of gymnastics is what helps in the wrestling? Because I imagine, I've never done gymnastics in my life, but I imagine that body awareness of like rotation, spinning upside down, and you still got that body awareness of where the ground is and all that sort of stuff. Do you think that's a major part of why gymnastics is so big in helping wrestlers?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have a master's in exercise science. That's called having a kinesthetic sense, knowing where your body is in space at all times. And gymnasts have the best kinesthetic sense. They have the best upper body strength, the best flexibility, the best balance, the best explosive power. I mean, they can do anything. They can do parkour. They can do breakdancing. They're incredible, and they're so precise. You might think that in wrestling it's kind of a brawl. As you know, if you're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know your position of your limbs and everything, it has to be as exact, has to be perfect.
Mark, I have a very interesting question. You were in Foxcatcher. Did you ever get a chance to wrestle with Yordanov at all? Valentin Yordanov? He was much smaller.
No, he was much smaller. He was like 100,
like much smaller.
And a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 114 and a half pounds. What was his weight class? Mine was 180.5 pounds. It
would be a little bit like a lion playing with a kitten. But
yeah.
No, because I remember in the my memory is a bit bad, but in the late 80s, early 90s, Bulgaria had quite a good wrestling program back then. And he was product of that.
Absolutely. You know, he inherited all of DuPont's money, or most of it. Most of the money DuPont had went to Giordano's family. And it's amazing how much money they ended up with.
Why did he inherit the money?
Well, because he was DuPont's best friend, I think.
Yeah, there was also some, in the Eastern wrestling community, there were some rumors. But, it doesn't matter because, I mean, it's only hearsay. But it was an interesting question because during those years, I don't think people realize you said something that as an American, everyone tried to beat you because like the world really was, especially in wrestling. So it was almost like they hated you, but the ones that they respected the most were also the Americans. So it was a very weird dynamic, So for example, you'd see something like Yarrigan. If he went against an American, he would try to destroy them. Yet when he was interviewed, he said, like, talking about Gable, he just said, Gable's, my very good friend and amazing wrestler. So it is a quite interesting dynamic. Yeah. So that's, being a Foxcatcher, the fact that Yordanov was there was a little bit interesting because was there any other international guys there or just Americans and Yordanov?
I don't know. My last wrestling match was in 1988. After that, my brother continued wrestling until 1996, and he did it at Foxcatcher, and he did it with Jordanov and all these other people. But I had quit wrestling by then, and I had gone into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I didn't really follow all the stuff that was going on back at Foxcatcher. It was just, I didn't care. I didn't like Foxcatcher. I didn't even want to think about it, really. It was so worst experience of my life. I can't believe I ended up there. It's just weird how that happened. But if all the things didn't happen to me the way that they happened at the time they happened, I probably wouldn't have ended my career the way I wanted in the UFC. And then to top it off, they made an Emmy-nominated movie about it.
Yeah.
Called Wrestling Demons. When they called me and said it was nominated for an Emmy, I almost shit my pants. I mean, I was like, you got to be kidding. It was just so good because it was a true story and it exposed all the lies in that piece of shit movie Foxcatcher.
Yeah, that was I watched that with a bunch of wrestlers and we were like, I don't think this is how it went. Too much artistic directing kind of crap, so.
Well, that director is quoted saying that his intention from the beginning was to demean and disrespect Mark Schultz.
What an asshole. Why? Like, you're an American hero. Why
I have no
would you
idea.
do that?
It's called being a schmuck. He was a schmuck.
I handed him my life story, and he does that to me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What's wrong with him? Anyway, it doesn't matter now. He embarrassed himself. He destroyed himself.
For sure.
And he's just...
Mark, do you know, have you heard of this guy, this Derek Moneyberg?
No.
Do you know who that is? I'm going to explain to you because I think there's a lot of parallels between him and DuPont. So this guy, Derek Moneyberg, look, all I've seen on the internet is the guy's done a lot of shady businesses and's been sued many times. You want to talk about a pudge. This guy claims he's 10% body fat or 7% body fat, and he's a big fat guy. He paid, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, claims he got his black belt, jiu-jitsu black belt, in 3.5 years. His skill level, when you look at him moving around on the mat, and mind you, he wrestles with socks on, does his jiu-jitsu with socks on. He's maybe a white belt, okay? And he just goes online, talks shit about everybody, and then he's paid thousands upon thousands of dollars to these jiu-jitsu guys and MMA fighters to endorse him. And he invites them all over to his apartment in Chicago, and where you do this quote unquote private training with him. He pays you thousands of dollars, and then you have to do an endorsement with him. You go on a video with him wearing his t-shirt or his rash guard, this Derek Moneyberg rash guard, to talk about how great he is. It's very psychotic, but it very much reminded me of this John DuPont delusion. And I think a lot of it is going to be these Ponzi schemes and stuff like that, where it's just gotten to the point where now some people are backtracking, even that Mikey Musumeci. Oh, I don't really know if he's a black belt. I didn't give him the black belt, and all black belts are different, so I don't know. It's up to, Jake Shields. He was the one that gave him the black belt, and blah, blah, blah. So everybody's kind of backtracking, but he pays guys a lot of money to, I guess, validate his experience and saying, well, I'm a black belt. I put 3,000 hours in the last 3.5 years. That's what makes me a black belt. And all these guys know, and he says, none of the UFC guys can submit me. Nobody can submit me. I'm like, okay, you paid him $5,000 to train you for an hour, so of course he's not going to submit you. But I just think it's very dangerous, these delusions, and that people get sucked into it because they do stuff for money. And, to me, it's a concern.
The belt system is a strange system.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a brilliant marketing strategy because, once you get a kid enrolled in karate or jiu-jitsu, he'll do anything to get the next stripe or the next belt. And so it's a genius system. The problem is if you don't wear a gi, it's no reason to wear a belt. And if you're not wearing a belt, then it means you don't have any skill. So obviously I'm kidding about that, but the belt system, it's funny because when Helio Gracie was in Brazil, there was only 3 belts: white, light blue, and dark blue. That was it. And when they came to America, Helio's a 10th degree red belt, and where did he get that? So everybody wonders, where did you get your belt? I went down and bought a belt one time from a martial arts store for $6, a black belt and a red belt, and I wore it in my club. And my philosophy was, if you can take it away from me, you can have it. So that's what gave me the right to wear my belt. And where do all these belts come from? Now, having a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt is very prestigious, and it's nice to have one. It's nice to be recognized as one, but I don't need validation to know who I am. I've suffered beyond what those guys have suffered.
So how would you, no-gi has become very popular, right? More and more, there's a lot of people just doing no-gi. They don't even wear a gi. But let's say somebody's not a competitor. If they're not competitors, which 90% of people are not competitors, how do you then validate their development or their growth if you don't have a belt system?
Well, wrestling doesn't have a belt system.
True. But they compete. Most of those wrestlers, they're competing, right? So that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm trying to kind of tease out, what do you do for non-competitors? The hobbyist, the person that's coming to train.
Good question.
What do you do?
Good question. I don't know. I don't have the answers. There are answers, I'm sure. When I started taking classes from Pedro, very uncomfortable at first, especially wearing that gi. But it wasn't very long before I started beating everyone. I mean, it was like 2 or 3 months maybe. And figuring out how to do submission holds is exactly the same as figuring out how to do a wrestling hold. It's just another move. So, and if you look at the number of finishing holds in no-gi jiu-jitsu, there's not that many. There's a lot of setups to get into those positions, but there's not that many positions. I mean, everything's relative, obviously, but the finishing hold itself, when I think about how crippling that Mikey lock is, man. I mean, I had a wrestler named Mike Bolster at BYU. He was our heavyweight, and I taught him how to do an ankle lock, and he would challenge me to like fight him, like no holds barred, every day. And I got so sick of this guy, but I taught him how to do a heel hook, and he caught me with it one time, and it cracked, and it still cracks to this day. But yeah, you ever cracked somebody's heel hook before?
Oh yeah.
I've had it done to me. It's very painful. Definitely wake you up in the morning.
Oh man, does it still crack?
Yeah, well, it never ever got to be the same though.
Yeah, and that's a mild case, if it's just cracking. That Mikey lock, you'll cripple somebody for life. I never understood why the UFC guys don't use ankle locks more than they do. It's weird. I think they should be using ankle locks way more. Like, who's that little Japanese guy that does that?
Imanari.
Imanari. That's one of my favorite moves. I didn't learn it from Imanari, but I actually came up with it myself, and then I saw Imanari do it later. He did a variation of it. And I just thought, man, especially on the street, and those ankle locks on the street, you crack somebody's ankle on the street, they can't even run after you.
True.
You know what I don't like is, when I first met Rickson Gracie, we wrestled each other. We had like this grappling match in the BYU wrestling room, and he jumped into the guard. That's a weird thing. That never happens in wrestling. So we went down to the mat, and we messed around there for 20 minutes. Anyway, he got me in a triangle, and I lifted him up, and I slammed him down to try to break his lock from that triangle. And it broke temporarily, but I didn't know what he was doing. I'd never seen a triangle before. So I knocked him off me, but he got back on fairly quickly and got a triangle. I had to tap out. That was my first introduction to jiu-jitsu. 1991, right after the Gracies first came to America. Pedro Sauer, my instructor, was living in a garage with Helio. He's the only Gracie family member who's a black belt. And this Brazilian missionary, this Mormon missionary, met Pedro in Brazil and talked him into moving to Provo, Utah, which is the heart of Mormonism. Now, I converted to the Mormon church, but I did it mainly to get the head coaching job at BYU. And but I did believe it for a while. I don't believe it anymore. But the Mormon people are great people, and they're tough too. There was a guy in Utah named Walt Bayless. Man, he was tough. Do you know who Walt Bayless is?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him actually.
He's this monster. He's like 6'2". He's in great shape. He's really powerful. He knows all these ankle locks and knee bars. He's a Sambo guy. He was a Marine. He's a nightmare. Anyway, I don't know what happened with him and Pedro, but something happened with him. And I know it was weird when the Gracies first came to America. Walt was, he's a very patriotic Marine, and he's like, I don't like that the Gracies are taking credit for all these submission holds, because he knew a lot of submissions, especially ankle locks and knee bars. And the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu didn't use ankle locks and knee bars back then. They do now, but I learned a lot from Walt before I ever saw anybody in Jiu-Jitsu doing that. Yeah, there was a lot of clubs competing for students back then. Walt was a terrible businessman. Every person that walked into his club, he'd beat the shit out of him, and the guy would never come back, and he wouldn't get any clients. So, I don't know. He never changed his business model. It was always... Anyway, he's a funny guy. But I think he was like offended that Brazilians were coming to America taking credit for all these submission holds when he had just as many submission holds in his repertoire. And I think, it became kind of one of those... Me personally, I wasn't into that, the fighting. I didn't care about that. I just wanted to learn, but it was difficult because there was a lot of animosity among club members. The wrestlers, they don't have that culture really. Yeah. Wrestling is more of a collegial atmosphere, whereas Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a business, and you have to cut your members off from all the other instructors and keep all your members in one group. Where are you guys located out of?
I'm in Orange County. You got to come visit me.
I'm in Brisbane, Mark.
You are, Adam?
Yeah, I'm in Brisbane. You know that.
What?
I'm in Brisbane. You know that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm in Israel.
You're in Israel?
Yeah.
And you're in Orange County, Brian?
I'm coming up there to see you. I got to come up there and see you because I got to do some training with you. I was going to tell you, I have big plans for you, Mark. You have no idea. We're going to talk offline. I think Adam gave you my phone number. I've got big plans for you to really blow you up. Because let me tell you something. There's not enough people, especially younger generations. I feel like they don't know who you are, which to me is sacrilegious. So I have an idea to kind of rejuvenate the legend of Mark Schultz. Because I think it's very necessary to establish proper technique and culture, especially in the U.S. But I was going to mention to you, over the summer, I got to do some training with your old buddy, Rico Ciparelli. And
really?
Yeah, he's great. I know you pinned him and everything, but the guy. So Eric Paulson is trying to get him out of retirement to start teaching again. He's really good, very technical, really great information, and violent. And I remember I was talking to him about it years ago, over 15 years ago, in Santa Monica. I used to watch him come train at this jiu-jitsu school because he was friends with the owner. Now, I was the only guy that at the time knew who Rico Ciparelli was. Nobody in that room knew who Rico was. And he'd come in looking like a homeless person, like he always does, right? Tattered shirt and shorts, and like nobody knew. They're like some homeless guy's walking in off the streets and wants to train, wants to roll. He would submit every black belt. Boom, 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 one after the other with ease. And the funny thing was, here was the best part about it. Rico's guard was better than anybody's guard in that room, okay? He submitted everybody off of his back. And I had asked the guy, the owner of the gym, I'm like, how is it that, I'm like, he comes in looking like a homeless person. He doesn't wear a gi, but he sits there. Number one, nobody can pass his guard. He had an impassable guard. He would lay there. And number two, every black belt would get submitted easily. And he's like, oh, he's a black belt. He's a black belt. But I'm like, he kind of like, almost as I was laughing because similar to your situation, the guy that owned the gym who was a black belt, who's a coral belt now, never gave him a belt. But he's like, no, this guy's a black belt. I'm like, well, it'd be nice for these other people to know. I go, because nobody in the room knows who the Baltimore Butcher is. Nobody knows how violent and dangerous this guy actually is as a grappler. And so over the summer, I was talking to Rico about it. I go, Rico, I remember watching you in the room and you would just kick the shit out of everybody. I go, what was it? How was it for you? And he starts laughing at me. He's like, it's just fun. He's like, it's just wrestling. He's like, I just wanted to know what they were doing. And I just saw it was just wrestling and I got to lay on my back. So I just wrestled off my back and just did what they did.
Rico's a very unorthodox wrestler also.
Mhm.
He does a lot of stuff from his back, even though most people don't go to their back in wrestling.
Mhm.
He does. He goes there, with the idea that he can flip the guy over to his back, or he's very unorthodox to wrestle. He's very hard to wrestle because he's so unorthodox. You got to be very basic with him to stay in control. He's always flipping and flying and doing all kinds of weird stuff, and he's very flexible. And I wrestled him 6 times.
Jeez.
And it was close every time. Well, the last 3 times we wrestled, he beat me 16-8, and then I pinned him twice. But I was so fucked up mentally. And I wanted to quit wrestling because it was no fun anymore. It was hard enough for me to keep a positive attitude, but being around that loser DuPont really had a negative impact on me. But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have gone to BYU. I wouldn't have met Pedro Sauer. I wouldn't have had that match with Hickson. I wouldn't have found Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I wrestled my brother one time. He came to Utah. The last time I saw him, he came to Utah, and we went on the ski vacation. And then one day he goes, "Hey, I want to try that Jiu-Jitsu out." And so I go, "Okay, just make sure you tap, okay?" And I kept drilling it into his head. And so he's not going to tap. So we go at it. I grab him in an arm bar, and I start stretching it. And he's not tapping, and I go a little farther, and it cracks. And oh man, I felt so bad. I had to take him to the hospital, and there was like bone fragments in there.
Oh my God.
And I was like, it's miserable. And I kept yelling at him. "I told you to tap." Anyway, he's so stubborn. No, he doesn't like it when people beat him in anything, really, especially when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. He was just the first introduction that he had. I'd been doing it 3 years, and he just wanted to feel it,
Did he try it again after that, or was he just like, "Oh, I'm not doing that again"?
He got murdered after that. I never saw him again after that.
Geez.
I don't know. It was a terrible way to see him. And the last thing I do is hurt him. God, I felt so bad too. I brought him up to Temple Square. I tried to convert him to the Mormon church, but his wife didn't believe in God. They never even considered it. That's good. I'm glad they didn't convert now that I'm not a member. But it's weird. You go to Utah, and the entire state of Utah is Mormon. Well, that's a big influencing factor. If you're going to be in that area, if you're a member of the church, you're kind of a known quantity. They trust you. They do business with you. You make money. And, if you're not a member, they don't trust you. They don't do business with you. So it's almost a closed society in a way. I know they've got a bunch of Mormons in Orange County, I think.
Oh yeah,
isn't there?
There's multiple Mormon temples or churches or whatever you call them, multiple. And I see the kids riding around on their bikes with their little ties and their name tags everywhere. Yeah, there's multiple over here.
Those missionaries, they came to me. I went to the Mormon church last week just because a friend of mine wanted me to go with him. So I went there, and I met these Mormon missionaries, and they found out who I was, and they're like, "Hey, can we talk to you about all things Mormon, I guess?" So we made an appointment, and I went and met them, and in my back pocket, I had printed up just one page of listing different evidences that the Mormon church is not true, Book of Mormon's not true, Joseph Smith's not a prophet, and all this. I got all this evidence to show these kids. So I show up at the Mormon church, and I take it out of my pocket, and I'm just about to give it to them, and I thought, I'm kind of torn. And I told them, I'm torn between giving you this evidence and just or putting them back in my pocket and let you stay the way you are for a little while longer. Because these guys are so sheltered within the Mormon church. They, going on a mission for them is like the first time they've been out of their home in like their entire life. So they're very innocent and very naive. And I thought I could wake them up with the brutal truth, or I could let them stay a little innocent a little longer. So I decided to let them stay the way they were a little longer. But the Mormon church, I can tell you, is all lies, 100% lies. But the people are great. The people are the best people I've ever met. And I'm constantly torn between telling them the truth and withholding the truth. Anyway, the number one ranked wrestling coach in the nation right now is a Mormon, Cale Sanderson. And the number one ranked NCAA coach, number one winningest coach in the NCAAs is Anson Dorrance, the North Carolina women's soccer coach. And he's a Mormon too.
They must be doing something. Well, let me ask you, speaking of Cale Sanderson, what do you think it is about his coaching style that is producing so many champions and so much success?
It's the financial power of Penn State wrestling alumni. That's what it is. They're so crazy for Penn State wrestling. They're willing to pump all this money into it. And, that gives them the highest amount of NIL money to give away. And now with NIL money coming into the sport, it's just going to be a matter of who's going to buy the NCAA every year. And Oklahoma State's got a shot at it, but I don't know, Iowa's probably got a shot at it. But it's whoever has the most money wins. And you know who really wins? You know who has the most money of anybody? Which is this is going to blow your mind. But it's the Mormons. They are the richest people you've ever met. I swear. They have the Mormon Church right now is worth close to $1 trillion. They own land as big as Delaware and Rhode Island. They've got hundreds of billions of dollars in the Ensign-Peak Advisors Fund from all the tithing people pay. Mormons pay 10% of their income in tithing. And matter of fact, when they interview you, they ask you, are you willing to pay 10%? And if you say no, you don't get to join. So not only do you not get to join, but you don't get to go to the temple. And the temple is where you receive these blessings that you will be saved. And it's a whole bunch of BS. It's the only thing that's going to save us is Jesus Christ himself, and it's not going to be through baptism or a church or any of that stuff. It's going to be your personal relationship with Jesus Christ, which I think I have a fairly close relationship with him. I never really bought into the whole Mormon thing that much. I mean, I believed it, but I didn't take it that serious. Like, they have such strict rules. You cannot drink coffee. Well, I drank coffee like every day of my life. Mormon or non-Mormon, I drink all the time. So, I still went to the temple. And that's the thing. If you don't go to the temple, you don't get the blessings of becoming a god. The Mormon goal is to become a god. And if you think about it, that's the reason Satan got kicked out of heaven, was because he wanted to be like Christ, right? Well, same thing. The Mormons want to be like, they want to have their own rule over their own planet and have like 1 million spirit kids, and they breed like a giant breeding program. That's what if the Mormon, that's what the Mormons are all about. I mean, everything's about breeding.
So speaking of Jesus, I have a question about ancient wrestling, because this is a very relevant topic. We see the historicity in the recycled concepts where people are saying, oh, they invented this, they invented that. But you can look in those ancient times, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, where wrestling seemed to be quite sophisticated and a hell of a lot more brutal than it is today.
Catch wrestling.
Yeah.
It's very brutal.
Very
Catch
brutal.
wrestling is basically Just jiu-jitsu and wrestling together.
Yes. Yeah. So, did you ever happen to study when you were training your wrestling? Did you ever happen to study any of the ancient techniques and see how that could be applicable to your style?
You mean the submission holds?
Submission holds and how they're entries into different throws. Because I know some we have a friend of the show, Tom Billings. He's like a historian on grappling, and he shows a lot of it. You can look at his IG. It's called War Yoga. It's fantastic, and he demonstrates a lot of these ancient techniques, in the variations of the throw. So I was just wondering if you ever got a chance to explore that.
Well, I never spent much time thinking about moves that were against the rules of wrestling until I quit wrestling and started jiu-jitsu and realized that if you read the rule book of a wrestling manual, all the moves that are against the rules are like the best jiu-jitsu moves to do in a street fight. That was my introduction after I got done with wrestling, and I had that match with Hickson. That was my introduction into submission grappling, and it came at just the right time too. Because I mean, I was done with wrestling, but I didn't have a way to put all my energy into another form of hand-to-hand combat. It just was sheer luck. It was sheer pure timing. I quit wrestling in 1988. In 91, the Gracies come to America, and I have that match with Hickson, and I become a student of Pedro's. Pedro gives me a call one day, and he said, "Hey, Dave Beneteau from the National Heavyweight Champion of Canada is coming down to train for UFC 9. And he wants to do jiu-jitsu with us. And he wants to wrestle with you. Would you wrestle with him?" I said, "Yeah." So he comes down, and we wrestled together for like 2 weeks. And then the last day we wrestled, I slammed him, and he broke his metacarpal right here. And I took him to the hospital, and the doctor said, "We can put a cast on, but then you can't fight. Or we can cut you open. We can join those two bones together with a plate and some screws, and you can maybe cover it up, use makeup, act like you're not hurt." So he said, put a plate in. So they put a plate in, and when we were in the press conference before the UFC 9, I went to Detroit with him to be his corner man because I thought he was going to get in trouble with that hand. So I was going to throw the towel. So I'm in the press conference with him, and somebody ratted him out and said his hand was broke. And so Pedro, who's sitting next to me, he says, "Hey, Mark, I know the guy that Dave's going to fight. I can beat him. I think you can too." So I go over to Bob Meyerowitz, and now I'm on high alert, man. My eyes are like this big. And I go over to Meyerowitz and I go, "Hey, what do you think about me taking Dave's place?" And he said, and I quote, "Oh, that's a great idea. You're Olympic champion. When you lose, it'll be even better."
Man, they flicked the lion's ear there, buddy.
I was like, "Okay, dude, I'm not going to punch you because you're going to pay me, but I want you to remember I could have killed you, and you need to remember that." So, so anyway, I didn't say that. I'm just kidding around. But I went to. I said, "Can I have the night to think about it?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I'm thinking about it all night long, and they're calling me like every 2 hours all night long. "We need a decision." And I said, "You guys you're gonna ruin my ability to fight if you keep calling me. I need to get some sleep." And so 10 in the morning they called me and they said, "Gotta have a decision right now or we're getting someone else." So I went down there, and right before I signed the contract, I said, "Give me one more minute." And I went over to this corner and I started to pray. And this is my LDS days. I'm still LDS at this point. So I had this was 4 months after my brother was murdered. And I had this feeling like my brother was there with me, or Jesus Christ was there with me, or some entity was there with me telling telling me I have to do this. So I went to Meyerowitz. I told him I'm doing it. I signed the contract. And then I went back with Pedro. We did some wind sprints. And then me and Big Daddy Goodrich, we met a couple hours later that night in the octagon. Right before that fight, Big John McCarthy came up to me and he goes, "Okay, Mark, there's going to be 3 rules in this event. No eye gouging, no biting, and no kicking if you wear shoes." And I decided to wear shoes because I'm a wrestler. I need traction. It was more important to me than kicking. So he said, also, there's another rule. We just got out of court. He goes, there'll be no closed fist punches. And I was like, oh, wow, great. I'm going to win for sure. Because my opponent's a tremendous striker, right? And John McCarthy goes, now show me a closed fist. And I went like this. And he goes, now show me an open fist. And I went like this. And he goes, no, this is closed. This is open. And he goes, if you violate the rules, we're going to fine you $50 per violation. But as far as when we'll collect, it'll just be like whenever. So, in other words, punch all you want, basically. Anyway, that was like one match before I walked into the octagon. And now I'm actually really good friends with Gary Goodrich. He was in a documentary, an Emmy-nominated documentary called Wrestling Demons, which was kind of centered around the UFC. I mean, it covered my life, but there was a big part of it was the UFC at the end. And Gary was in that documentary. Man, he was good. Chael Sonnen was in it. Dave Beneteau, Pedro Sauer.
How do people see that? If they want to watch
UFC
that
Fight
wrestling,
Pass.
It's on UFC Fight Pass. Okay.
Yeah, it was on YouTube for free for a long time, but they took it off.
Oh, damn.
But yeah, I couldn't believe it. And they said that it was nominated for an Emmy. I just, that means the story that I was, means it was a good story. And, that book that I don't like the name of that book, Foxcatcher, but aside from the name, the book is my autobiography, and it's an Amazon editor's choice, and it's the best-selling amateur wrestling book on Amazon. But I went over to Goodreads, and I noticed that there's a lot of negative comments against me and against my book on that website.
Wow.
They don't like me because the book is kind of misrepresenting that it's a horror story or a true crime story. It's not. It's an autobiography. And if you read it as expecting true crime and you get an autobiography instead, you're going to be pissed off. So there's a lot of people pissed off.
Can I just say
on Goodreads,
to everybody out there, if you haven't read it, read it. I've read it multiple times. Great read, great story. Right. Dude, as your friend, I'll tell you, it's amazing. It's cracking. And guys, if you're listening and you want to know the real story behind Mark and not the bullshit that's published in Hollywood, get the book, read it.
Yeah, I also recommend it. It's Grappazilla approved 100%. You want to know how it is to be a man, how to be a champion, how to be a guy who goes through the good and the bad with a heart of gold. That's Mark. Read it. Order it. Go for it. And
so, Mark, because I want to respect your time here. Tell us how we can follow you on social media, because I do need to help you get your account to go from private to public so we can build your following. So how do we find you on social media?
Okay. Facebook, my name is MS Grappling. On Instagram, my name is Mark P. Schultz. On Twitter, my name is Mark Schultz. That's my name with a Y at the end. And those are the main platforms I use. I know I need to get my Mark Schultz .com. I've had markschultz.com forever, but I can't. I'm trying to figure out how to update the website myself using WordPress, because I don't know how to do that yet. So I need to find somebody.
I have somebody that can help you that did my website. They're very reasonable. They're amazing.
Man, and we've talked about it before too, Mark, as well, with doing it yourself. And tell you tell you how to do it and stuff as well if you want to, because I did mine ourselves. So there's multiple avenues for you to go to get it.
Do you know how to use WordPress?
Well, yeah, I do, but I mean, we've talked about it before, but I'll talk to you later about it. I'm private and
yeah,
get you worded up on what I did, and then Brian. I mean, if you give Brian a call anyway, I'll send you his number, and he'll be able to tell you his guy as well. So between us, we'll get it going.
Okay.
We need to get you out there, and like I said, I'm going to talk to you privately about some ideas that I have that I think is really going to launch Mark Schultz 2.0.
Oh wow!
So,
awesome.
Yeah, and I got to get up there and do some training with you. And Mark, I want to thank you so much for coming on with us again. It's been an absolute honor, huge inspiration.
Thank you.
Like I said, I was there in 1984 Anaheim Convention Center, so that was a huge amount of fun for me as a little kid, watching you and your brother and doing all that.
What year were you born, Brian?
You're gonna out me here. 75.
75. Okay.
Yeah. I think I was 9. I was like 9 during the Summer Olympics. Yeah.
Right.
So my parents took us down there to the Anaheim Convention Center to watch you guys. It was amazing.
Yeah. That was. Oh man, that was just. It's beyond words to describe just how intense that was. I mean, there's so much pressure to win. Even though because the boycott, it raised expectations, and the fact that expectations were raised across the board didn't take into account the fact that some of these weights weren't diluted at all. Some of them were just as strong, and my weight was one of them, and so. The pressure was unnatural. Anyway, it was. I got very lucky. Man, I got lucky.
Well, luck is all about hard work and perspiration and preparation, right? Luck is just a combination of that hard work and preparation, and nobody has done it like you and Dave. It's just. I can't tell you again just what an honor and just how much in awe of you that I am, that you've come on, your techniques, what you and your brother contributed to the world of wrestling and American wrestling, and especially, in the 80s for us Americans, in the Cold War, to have heroes and champions like you and Dave as little kids, for us to look up and watch you and Dave. It was a thing of beauty. So,
thank you.
Amen.
Oh, man. When you get this episode ready for distribution, send me the link and I'll share it on all my social apps.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll do that. And with that, guys, we are out of here.